Totally go right that. Let me just go. Let me go back in a few slides then. How about that? All right. Um, I guess this is part of the game. Colby and I were just chatting away for like 4 solid minutes. I
You missed
think
some really good stuff. No.
you guys missed some really good stuff. And so, how about we start again? Because I can see now actually that we're live. I can see it in the corner. How about that?
This time it'll be better, I promise.
The thing is, this is literally my job. What happened? Anyways, all good. So, welcome to Unpack the Stack. And today we have Colby Fayock on the stream. And so, Colby, how about you introduce yourself for a second?
Sure. So, yeah, I'm Colby Fayock. I work at Cloudinary as a developer experience engineer. So I do everything from like content creation to building integrations and just generally helping people do awesome things on the web. And hopefully sometimes or a lot of times that includes Cloudinary. But ultimately, I enjoy helping people get productive.
You certainly have for me. I've read a bunch of your stuff and it's super fun.
Awesome.
So, in these streams, we also always go over some industry news. And after that, we'll dive into the actual subject. And so let's go over that for a minute. So we literally just described this one. And now that we're live, we'll just describe it again. So this is about something we call dreamy blur. And I saw this the other day and I got really excited about it because this developer saw an image from a friend. And that friend had taken that picture and it had like this really nice glowy, blurry thing on it, and the developer asked, "Hey, but how did you do that? Like, did you have some filter or maybe post process this thing?" And then, as it turns out, the lens was just smudgy, which is kind of crazy, right? And you can never really reproduce that. But then he did, because he made like an XML kind of filter. And I think it's 4 or 5 filters on top of each other that make this image. And it's just kind of fun. And so, Colby, how could you do this with Cloudinary? I think you can, right?
Yeah, so I don't know the exact filters that he's using, but like just kind of looking at the thumbnails here at a minimum, it looks like we can get a little brightness. We can
Yeah.
definitely add blur. And those two, like, there's a ton of effects you can do on top of that, but those look like probably the primary ones, right?
Yeah,
Where we can
exactly.
control whatever brightness we want and we can make it as blurry as we want, just right in the URL.
Yeah, and it also looks like the highlights are a little bit enhanced. And I think you can probably
Mm.
do that as well, right?
There's a highlights feature as well.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. I always love this stuff. Like it makes the web a little bit more arty. If it performs,
yeah,
I don't know. You better do a Cloudinary filter because then it's just baked in,
right.
basically. Yeah. So then the next one that is really fun. Well, fun. I don't know. It's important. Like this was all over my Twitter and my LinkedIn, and even I saw it on TikTok, where Wix, which is a really large platform that allows people to kind of drag and drop design websites, they have a lot of features, and they also have a lot of error messages. And these error messages are pretty hard to write, like because they tend to like make the user feel like they're stupid, or there are no actions that they can ask somebody, "Hey, what happened here?" or things like that. And so I think they rewrote thousands of error messages into
That's
something
crazy.
good. So, Colby, have you ever had to write error messages?
Yeah, so for that was probably more when I was doing more like my engineering work and trying to figure out how I could, in human speak, describe the errors that were happening from the APIs. Definitely nothing nearly as extensive as that, but um, we I tried to do what I could to make it so people understood what they have, giving enough information that they could try to fix it. Otherwise, like, shoot them to support.
Yeah, exactly. And like they had this, if you go to this link, you'll see some very interesting examples of where it basically just says the third party we integrated with broke. And then that's it. Like that's not an error message. You kind of have to say something happened in the communication. Beware, we saved your data on our end. Like, and then click here to try again or contact someone. Like
Yeah.
that alone is such a big difference, right?
Totally, because if somebody gets an error, and especially if you've been doing a lot of work, that's a lot of anxiety, right? So like
Yeah.
that could like drive somebody crazy. So being able to give them that confirmation that the work that they did isn't lost is important.
Yeah, and people do important things. Like for example, I'll be speaking at JamstackConf, and I'll have to travel, so I have to fill out an ESTA form because I'm European.
Hmm.
And then if you type in your phone number in this US integrations field kind of thing, it never says it's a correct number because it doesn't know the format of France. But
Interesting.
you can, and then after, if you do it 2 times or 3 times, type in the number, it says, just say this is fine, kind of in the error. If they're like, okay, if you're sure that this number is actually correct, even though we think it's not correct, just leave it.
It's
Like,
interesting. So it tries. I've never seen that before, where it
yes.
tries a few times with the air. Huh.
Yeah, so you remove a zero, you add an extra one before, right? Because you have the plus something, and then it still says
Yeah,
it's wrong. But then the next part is, if you know this is correct, just leave it.
that's funny.
That is the strangest thing. And I
Yeah.
think because of stuff like that, you and me will always have a job,
Right. Right.
right? There's always place for better web developers.
On one hand, though, like it sounds like the UX could use some improvement there, but I also do
Clearly.
like the idea because I know there's been times where I've seen people get frustrated because they know they're entering or they think they're entering the right thing, so they could error with nothing to help them. But
Yeah,
being able to let them still submit is important. Otherwise, you're
that
going to
is
get a support
actually
call.
good. Yeah, yeah. So there's it's a whole thing. How about that? This error message
Yeah.
stuff. I like it. And then this one is all I love the controversial stuff about Tailwind because I never liked Tailwind until I used it. And that was for a while. I used it so much that I forgot how to do CSS. And
Uh,
now I'm kind of in the middle again. And they just released a new version. And so, Colby, where are you with Tailwind?
I appreciate it for what it is, but I don't think it's my cup of tea. I
Mm,
haven't used it extensively, so like I it's really I only poked around with it, but I really enjoy writing my external SAS files and using that to do what I do. Like anytime I've come into an app and had to deal with that, it personally just it feels overwhelming because like I'm
mm,
imagining like some of the scenarios I've been in where like just the basic HTML, and then you have a ton of those CSS selector strings on top of that. That just to me feels overwhelming and makes it hard for me to read through the HTML.
yeah.
But like I said, it's I appreciate it for what it is. It's just not my cup of tea.
Yeah. And this is it for a lot of people. And interestingly, like with this new version, especially when they went to version 3, they improved performance like by, I don't know, 100%. It's a lot nicer now.
Yeah, it's really
And
cool to see the strides they're making with it.
yeah, it's an interesting approach, but if you have to repeat yourself all the time, then it's no longer nice. So there's a way to go. But like for example, they now have things like container queries, which is what
Mm,
we want, right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
I'm not even sure they're actually using CSS native container queries. I think they're just parsing whatever is above it and do stuff with that. Or
interesting.
I'm not actually sure that it totally works how it's expected to work. So I'll just
Yeah.
have a look. I've used it because sometimes it's nice and fast. Because this is the one thing I always struggle with. Are you going to use BAM naming if you use your own CSS? Or I always start with that and I like it. And then halfway down the project, it just fails and I stop using it and then it's a mess.
Yeah. So
Always.
So what I've been doing is I try really hard to jam myself into the what is it CSS what is it module CSS modules.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
like every single component I have has its own style sheet.
Okay.
Now forcing myself into that, sometimes I get in a space where it's like I really have to create a new CSS component for that. But
Yeah.
like because I'm forcing myself in that habit, like it ends up for me being easier to maintain and manage without having to do hacky things to get around some of those things. Now, what I typically try to do is if I have a component, like I try to accept an external class name and so that I can
Mhm.
layer that on top from the page style sheet. Um, but it's it's really helped me to kind of narrow my focus onto the different work I'm doing.
Yeah. And I think that whole scoped approach with some global styles and then overruling these scoped, that's really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as long as you don't get too specific with the selectors, then you can kind of shoot yourself in the foot.
Oh yeah, I've been there. And that's a nice bridge to the next one, where the emotion team is talking about actually no longer using CSS in JS. And I don't know where they'll go with it, but it's a really interesting article about the things they've mentioned, have figured out about CSS and JS that made them go away from it. And mainly, I guess that it looks like maybe it has a bit more CSS over the wire. and there's more
Mm,
CPU usage because when your React rehydrates, it also has to apply all these CSS classes and then break that up and does all the smart stuff with it because there's lots of if else going on.
yeah.
But then also what I've seen in projects before where we used this stuff, that we had memory leak after memory leak because not all developers get it. And I think that might be the biggest issue. Have you ever used this stuff?
It's another one of the things that I've played with, but never have really adopted. Um, I've always wondered that about that though, because just even in the name CSS and JS, that means there's likely more JavaScript, right?
A
So that
lot
means there's
more.
more to run.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I've always wondered if how that impacts performance, and um, yeah, it's like I never found that compelling enough for me to want to really give it a try. So that's
Yeah.
I enjoy and I'm very productive with the SAS style sheets. And
I've been that for many years and now I'm kind of switching around. And at work, we've used emotion quite a bit. There, it works well because the developers are awesome. So everything is structured. But before, when I worked at agency, we had to work with partners where we had this huge website all in React script, so not with Next.
mm,
And they didn't fully set up how everything rehydrated or re-rendered itself. And so after 2 minutes on a page, we would have a crash of the browser because they would do one change somewhere and then the whole tree had to be rehydrated
oh
with all the CSS and JS classes, and they were not actually garbage collected somehow, or it kept happening. And so yeah, without that stuff, it would have been like a no problem or less of a problem at least.
yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what emotion will do from now on. I think that was my last slide. Yes, it was. All right. So thank you for talking to me about all the new stuff we saw this month. How about now we go into the real subject stuff? So tell us what you want to be talking about.
Sure. So I've recently been working on a project called Next Cloudinary, and it's a way to bring some of the best Cloudinary tech into a Next.js application easily. Right now, the kind of default solution is you can just either pass your Cloudinary URL straight into the Next.js image component, which is
Okay,
fine,
yeah.
but then it kind of does double the work with the
But
Next.js
they
image
have a loader,
processing.
right, for it?
Yep, that's the second thing you can do by default. They
Oh,
have a
sorry. There
loader.
we go.
No, 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 no. But it's very basic. So like it just supports like the width, height. Um, uh, not a lot of features in it that can fully take advantage of
Yeah.
Cloudinary. So I wanted to extend that and see what I could do, and that's where Next Cloudinary came from.
So, for people who don't know, can you explain what Cloudinary does?
Sure,
And
sure.
maybe a bit for developers, but also a bit more higher level because there's also like a DAM system, right?
hmm Yeah, so we do everything from asset management to the delivery. So that includes, maybe a creative team uploading their images, and then somebody being able to manage those, search for the images and use them in the content where they need to, or product managers, right? But then that starts to bleed over to the development side, where developers can take that imagery and adopt it into their application. Once it is in Cloudinary, you have a ton of different features on top of that. The most basic and most compelling, in my opinion, is the automatic optimization,
Oh yeah.
where by tacking on a simple URL parameter, you're going to get automatic formats delivered, like AVIF if the browser supports it,
Mm.
and it'll automatically compress it to a point that's not visually different. So those are huge performance wins, right? Especially if you're managing images from people who don't know to optimize their images, right?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. And
yeah.
so is there also stuff like when a content editor uploads an image, can they kind of like apply a template of sorts where it basically says, okay, this one is going to have to be a square somewhere, but we need to focus on where the action is. Is that a content editor thing or is that more of a developer thing?
So there's kind of different approaches that you can do. We have what's called upload presets, where
Mhm.
if this upload preset ID is used in that upload process, we can automatically do some of those things. Maybe it's resizing, or maybe
Yeah.
it's kicking off an AI analysis of the image to add tags automatically. But at the same time, you could also do something where we have webhooks or notification URLs, where maybe you're listening for any upload to to occur, and you kick off another an endpoint, maybe a serverless function that'll automatically perform that work for you. So like there's a couple different options for how you do that, and especially depending on how granular you want to be with the transformations that you're making. But we give a lot of opportunities for whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I honestly I haven't seen a system that does it this well because it's kind of like it's super smart out of the box, but you can then add so much on top, which is almost crazy.
Yeah,
So
and I feel
sorry,
like
go on.
I should also add, like, we were talking about doing those transformations on upload, but you can
Yeah,
also do all that on the fly, which is how I usually do it.
exactly.
So you can have your
Yeah.
main source image and then just tack on the parameters to resize it, to crop it using face detection, so it automatically crops to the subject.
Mm.
So there's a lot of things you could do on the fly, which just makes it a breeze for developers to use.
Yeah, and do you feel, in your opinion, that developers should be the people who make these images responsive, choose the sizes, choose the crops based on maybe some a point that somebody sets, or should that be more on like in a CMS or something?
So that's a good question. I think there's a mix of it. So
Mm.
um, I think where possible, using the AI to determine the subject and crop based off of that, that just makes it easier for everybody. But sometimes creatives want to have very granular control over that, right? So then
Yeah.
they can edit that image to whatever crop they need. Now, the thing that's where the developers should have full control is things like the responsiveness,
Yes.
where we can specify what sizes we want, build all those URLs with the dynamic sizes on the fly to make sure that we are delivering the size that we need.
Yeah, that's really I've in my career I've seen so many different approaches to this, and I think what I love about Cloudinary, it's literally just the API is the URL.
Yeah. Like I
And
like to think about e-commerce where if you have a product page, usually you have a big image and then you have some little thumbnails, right?
yes.
Like you don't need two different source images. You have that one source image and specify the exact sizes you want. Or say maybe a month down the line, you want to change that a little bit. You don't need to go back to creative. You just change it in the code and it's now
Oh man,
updated.
it's so easy and cool. But that those are two different images, right? They just become a different URL, so it's a different source.
So it's the same source. So like you have your source file in Cloudinary, but
Mhm.
then Cloudinary, chops it up or resizes it and it stores it cached so that it doesn't need to be reprocessed every single time. But you're still pulling from that same source image so that
Yes.
you know,
And so let's say I'm just gonna ask a few annoying questions, and then after that, I'll love to see what you've built. So let's say you have an image of a model on a fashion website. Like generally, models have these kind of contracts that say for autumn or fall, whatever, this is the image that you can be on. But then after that, it has to go off the internet because the model goes to another brand and does something else. Are there kind
interesting.
of like these type of rules for cache purging and removing stuff, or is this like a crazy question that you never see?
I don't know I'm gonna be honest, I've never heard of this use case before.
Oh,
That's
me
really
many
interesting.
times
But
because yeah.
there's
Oh, sorry.
absolutely rules for caching, but I would expect that it, just thinking about it, I would expect that the image would just be changed at that date as opposed to busting. Like I wouldn't expect a team to use the same exact image and then bust that to refresh it as opposed to swapping what image is used. But I'm not sure. I've never been in that scenario.
Yeah, somehow in my career I've only worked on like luxury brands with models, and but also like I work on the website for FIFA football games, right? Like I
Mm,
think it was FIFA 12 and 13 and 14, and there we had the same issues where football
yeah,
players were not allowed to be in the same place, or soccer players, I'm sorry. And
right.
like all these things, man, it's really funny how that works.
Yeah, I've heard something similar to like other sports where like especially with contracts or if there's a strike, like you have to be very specific to be able to change that image on the fly, right? And I know there's definitely solutions around that for how you actually approach that. I just don't know the answer to speak confidently on it.
Oh, that's all good. Now we had things like where we actually started using Cloudinary for these kind of campaigns, where we overlaid different shoes because Adidas and Nike couldn't be in the same image.
Okay.
Like these kind of crazy things, right? So we just kind of photoshopped it and then made a layer in Cloudinary. Anyways, without going too far away from all this,
Yeah.
would you mind maybe sharing your screen and then showing a bit of maybe getting started or something, or like anything around how it works, because I'm old school Cloudinary user. So everything I do directly on the URL because I can like dream these variables. I can imagine you're not doing that because that wouldn't be super easy. So are you like using an SDK from Cloudinary perhaps?
Yeah, so I'm using the Cloudinary URL Gen SDK, but I
Oh,
built
yes.
I built a wrapper function around it so
Mhm.
that I could simplify the API specifically for the component. And my plan is to eventually take that API and roll it out to other frameworks. But that's future thinking here.
That's something that's
Um,
going to happen at one point.
yeah, I'm actually already talking to Astro about how we can make something happen like that.
Ooh,
So
interesting.
yeah, so I'm excited like to be able to figure out how to bring it to different frameworks. But yeah, so what happens is here, should I start sharing my screen?
Yeah, sure, sure. Share
Okay,
ahead.
let's go into it. Uh, okay, there's you.
Oh, yeah.
So I
Here we
have
go.
this, yeah. So I have my project. It's Next Cloudinary, and again,
Yeah.
like the goal for this is that I want to make it really easy for somebody to be able to work with Cloudinary tech, extending what the Next.js image component has already done. And the Next.js image component, what I'm actually doing is wrapping that rather than rebuilding everything from scratch, so that we can
Okay.
still take advantage of all the good things that the Next.js image component does. So just starting from the top, the basic usage is adding it. You got to specify your cloud name because, of course, we need to know where to serve the images from. But once you're all set up, this is just basically all you need to do. You specify your width and height, just like you would an image, and your source, where at this point, the source would be the Cloudinary public ID, or we also
Yeah.
support passing in the full URL right now.
Oh, that's nice. And so
Yeah, just
this
a
is
little nice
has
to have.
is this feature parity with next image, or is this
Pretty
like a
much.
separate component?
This is pretty much feature parity at this point
Oh,
where
interesting.
um, for just this basic usage. The only real
Okay.
difference for this particular usage is passing in the public ID so that
Okay.
you're actually sourcing it from Cloudinary. But let's get into some more things. Skipping ahead to, let's say, maybe examples. So this is just like a dump of different examples that you can do, but I'm trying to take advantage of all the different features that we can
Mm.
to really make some cool things happen, like background removal. So we support on-the-fly
Whoa.
background removal if you have the Cloudinary AI add-on actually added. So you can super easily do that just right inside your Next.js app, or pan and zoom, which is another cool one, which
Does that
creates
become
a,
like a GIF or something?
yeah, it creates a GIF. And I mean, you can also make it a video if you prefer, but like
Wow.
you can make it a GIF where now you can set up your the zoom pan. You can target where you want it. You can even use AI to determine where to target. So, for
Wow.
instance, if I wanted to target the turtle's face, I can set it up to do that. There's a lot of crazy things you can do with the Cloudinary API, and what I try to do with this, if I can find another example. So, like tint, for instance, like what I'm doing is I'm taking the Cloudinary tint API, and I'm pretty much
Mhm.
just passing in that string. So it fully supports what Cloudinary can do with tint. I'm
Oh,
just
wow.
making it a prop so that it's a little bit easier to use on any image you want.
So all of these are literally just props on the image tag.
Yep. All you see here in
Wow.
the code, these are just props, and it starts to get more complicated. So we were talking about the cropping, and
Yeah.
this is using Gravity Auto, which will automatically determine the subject in the photo, and it'll crop it to that. Um, moving
Man,
down,
I'm so used to doing all this in the in the URL.
yeah,
I
yeah.
I've
Um,
written so many like mapper things and stuff. This is
Yep.
nice.
Yep. And like the image overlays, like I this is still a little bit like configuration heavy, but it kind of has to be, because what you can do is you can overlay an image on top of it, but you got to specify what that image is, position it where you want, and add some effects so that you're basically, so you add your base layer and then whatever you want to do with it, right? So whether that's positioning or whatever you want to do. But you can also do images underneath. So if you want a turtle floating in space, you can remove the background and then add an underlay underneath so that you can completely control what that looks like, which may not be practical for a turtle in space. But imagine something like e-commerce, where maybe you have the product models and you want to switch the background underneath depending on the usage. So that
Oh,
can become
man,
a very compelling
that's
example,
great.
right?
Yeah, once a while back, I had to do for like a luxury brand. They had like lots of earrings and things like that, and they
Mm,
had like 5,000 images, I think, for all the products,
wow.
and they were all like on white, but with like a shadow photoshopped in it by interns over the years. They're all
Mm,
PSD files, And then we had two options because we had to clean it all up and make PNGs without the background. So it's either we go to Cloudinary and we make few rules like you have,
Yeah.
or we hire another army of interns to just open all the PSDs and change everything up. And in the
Right.
end, we did it in 2 days with Cloudinary.
It just makes it so much easier
Amazing.
to
Yeah.
like, and we're talking here about scale, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe being able to do some of those things manually works fine for your own little personal project, but
Yeah.
talking about scale with huge e-commerce stores or whatever your use case is, if you are a big sports organization, like these
Yeah.
are things that will take a lot of time for people to do manually.
Oh, clearly. And so you like looking at this for like here, add some text and
Mhm.
some color and all the things. So did you just kind of rewrite that URL API into something with props?
Yeah, so I can show the only other thing I want to say. So we have a basic usage set up for an upload widget, which
Oh,
I still need to
nice.
work on the documentation and clean it up a little bit. But what I wanted to show here is that like we're trying to push it to make it easier to integrate with a lot of the different Cloudinary
Yeah.
tech. And I also have a PR for Open Graph images, so it's based on the Cloudinary image API, but
Mhm.
it's nested inside of the head component so that all you need to do is drop it in a page with whatever you want in the image using this API, and you have yourself
Man,
an Open Graph
we
image.
just built this by hand for
Yeah.
uniform.
Yeah. Like it's that's what I do too. I use the Node SDK to create the
Yeah,
images, and
exactly.
I'm hoping to make it a lot easier to do without having to fuss around with all the different
So
SDKs.
that's like in Next.js, for example, you have this helmet part, or maybe it's just called hat now. I don't know.
It's head
And
down,
you
yeah.
can literally just add a Cloudinary image in there for your OG tag.
So technically, you have to include it outside of the. This is getting in the weeds, but you have to include it
Oh, good.
outside of
Go
the
for
head
it.
component only
Mhm.
because the head component doesn't support React components.
Oh, okay.
So inside of the OG image component, I include the head tag so that Next.js sees that and kind of pulls it up into the
Okay,
rest
that's
of it.
the other way around, basically, which is
Yeah,
super smart in Next.js.
yeah,
Like any component can have a hat property, right? And then it just injects it.
yeah. And let's see. It looks like the Next.js URL is wrong right now. I think I have that fixed in a branch, but yeah. So like Next.js will do all the looking through all the different head components
Mm.
and figure out the order to kind of cascade them on top of each other to pull the correct tags for the page that's being rendered.
Oh man, it's so easy and magical, right?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I know you're in the Nux world. Does Nux have similar things like that?
Only just now.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, it's
Yeah,
cool to see
they
that.
with Next
Yeah.
3 they have it.
It's cool to see the progress, and I'm not a Vue guy, but like I love to see that you get similar developer experience tooling,
It's
whatever framework you're working with.
closing. It's the gap is closing. At one point, it's just whatever you like, you choose, and you're fine.
Yeah.
Right before Next kept advancing a lot, and then Next stayed behind a bit. But now, when they're going live, whenever they finish their thing, it's gonna be relatively similar.
Wow.
What is kind of fun with Nux is that they make this own, like the Nitro engine, they call it,
Hmm.
and it just runs in a serverless function somewhere, and then does all the things that Next and Vercel combined do.
Oh
So
wow.
it's kind of you can put it anywhere on Azure, and it does that as well
So
with
it's not platform
ISR, and
specific.
it's kind of fun, and it works
Yeah.
on all the Edge workers and stuff.
That's super
But
cool.
it's gonna be next gonna do that soon. Like, let's see what they say next week when
Yeah. Yeah.
when the event launches. Right? Yes, they're always amazing with that stuff.
Yeah. I'm excited to see everything they announce. But like if we start diving in, I
Yeah,
probably does not worth going through the README because the docs are going to be taking over the README, so they're more up to date.
sure.
But let's dig into the actual code of what's happening. Um, so starting at the actual component that I have in here, this is we're importing the image component and we're literally just wrapping it and applying additional props to it. So
Oh, this is
um,
literally the image, and wow, you make
yep.
your own loader. That's it.
So,
Nice.
yep. So the loader is so we talked earlier before about how you can use Cloudinary in the default Next.js image component,
Exactly.
and they have that basic Cloudinary loader. But what I'm doing is I'm creating my own loader so that I can extend it with the Cloudinary features. So
Okay.
there's a few things that I need to do inside of the component itself, but I try to avoid doing those things here. Like for instance, the one thing I need to do is I want to create some options for people using the placeholder. Just these aren't super practical, but they're just more fun so that people do have options for the placeholder they use.
Yeah,
Whether
that was actually my next question because next image has all this like blur up placeholder,
Mhm.
auto loading, fancy stuff, and so you still have that with this option.
Yep. So what I'm doing, and I can open up this. Let's see.
So you
Oh, no,
just
that's in the
rebuild it,
gist.
and then you're actually just doing a blur of your Cloudinary image, I
Yep,
imagine.
exactly. And
Nice.
let's see. But the nice thing is what I'm doing is I'm adding some additional features on top of that. So
Mm,
maybe you want a grayscale, you know, and again, like they're just additional options that you can have in order to do this if you want. Or you can change the colors so that you have like a colorized placeholder look. I don't know. It's just being able to use Cloudinary tech to give you more options is ultimately my goal. And
exactly.
it's a lot of fun being able to provide those different options for people.
And you're
Um,
setting quality to 1, so it's gonna be like
yeah.
super
Yeah.
like super small stuff.
Quality to 1, making it 100. I tried to play around with the different widths to see what
Mhm.
works, and if you make it too small, you start to lose the image detail, and
Yeah,
it's not because you're blurring it, you don't want too much image detail, but you want enough to kind of make it look like it is replacing the image, you know?
exactly, and so I don't see any blur added here. Is that done with a CSS filter or something?
Yeah, so Next.js actually does the blurring also in the DOM. I don't know if the next image
Ah.
will do that, but they do it right in the DOM.
Ah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one thing I liked a bit less about the next image tag is that they add so much
Mm.
HTML around your
Yeah.
image and then has have some sort of CSS. And you know what? If you use it correctly, it works really well and you don't have to
Mhm.
think. But I'm old school. And what I want to do is like add an image tag and just add a width.
Yeah. No,
And the
I
height is taken. Oh, that's dead. Right?
well,
That doesn't work. Well, maybe now
yeah.
it's fixed, but when I tried it, definitely not.
So the issue with that though, like I understand why they require the height and it's to avoid the layout shift, right? Like I totally
Exactly.
get that. I wish there was an easier way to make that happen automatically, but like I think it's a valid reason to require it, even if it
Yes.
is a pain sometimes.
But it actually makes sense because the width and height are just for the ratio, so you don't have any changing in your rendering, which actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, for sure. So like they don't actually hold you to that width and height. It's just basically being able to calculate that and make it responsive based off of that.
Exactly.
But yeah, let's dig into more of the features. So ultimately, I create this Cloudinary loader, and I've actually kind of refactored this a little bit since in a different PR, which we don't
Mm,
need to really cover now. But so what I'm doing is ultimately I'm building my own Cloudinary loader, and I'm going through. I've set up this plugin system where I'll create the basic image, but then I have each of the different transformations defined in a plugin, so that. And the reason I did that is because I'm trying to think about how I organize the logic of adding whatever somebody wants for a transformation. That would be a really ugly looking function or whatever
yes.
to determine all that, right? So,
One very big switch case with a lot
yep.
of add-ins and pushes to it. Yeah, of course.
So I created these plugins, and let me pull that up. Now we're in the plugins section where let's look at overlays, for instance. Oh, no, that's one of the more complicated. But let's just look at remove
Yeah,
background for now.
let's start with a simple one.
Yeah. So remove background, all it is a very simple effect that you add to the URL. So what I'm doing is I'm defining the prop that controls that,
Yeah.
checking if it's there, and I simply take the existing image instance that I created that gets passed into that plugin and
Okay.
apply that effect. So
And then
that's
you
all it's
don't
doing.
even have to remove it. You're just modifying the current Cloudinary image object, I imagine.
Yep, yep. So what you do when you're using the JS URL SDK, the URL Gen SDK, words, you create your image
Morning.
instance, yep, and then you apply whatever effects you want, and then at the
Oh yeah,
very
it's
end,
chained, right? You can just pipe things in
yep,
all the
and at the
time.
very end, you turn that into a URL, which I can show. So at the very end, we return this URL,
Yeah,
and that's what gets passed as the return statement to the loader, because the loader ultimately wants a URL, and that's what we're giving them. But you can see I'm also passing in the default options for the format and quality. So
yeah,
I choose auto for both of those by default. So by default, you're
sure.
optimized. But if you want to change it, because I know some people prefer to have more control over that, you absolutely have that option.
Yeah, I've seen people use quality 70 and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I'd never do that because
yeah, I like using auto.
Cloudinary's quality setting is insanely good. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's nice you can change it because sometimes you want something just to be a PNG, right?
Hmm. Exactly. there's different use cases, right? So trying to respect what those are. So the effects, like I try to support all the different effects that are you could find in the Cloudinary docs. So I created this big list of what's available. Some of them are one word, so I don't need to create a mapping. But I'm trying to keep a consistent camel case for the entire API. So that's why I have to have a little bit of a mapping here. But looking through, trying to find what they're defining and applying that effect based off of what rules they have on the component.
I kind of want to see the oil paint.
Yeah. Do I have an example of that? I don't know if I have an example of that. Let's see.
Maybe if you don't, we can actually set one up.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what we could do. Yeah. Yeah. Do you think, is there anything else do you think I should cover?
When I'm looking at this, what I'm seeing is not that much React. I'm just seeing some very smart JavaScript.
Yeah.
And so
true.
will this mainly runs on SSR, right? It just outputs something through Node.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. I was thinking about ways that I could extend it to make it more helpful. Like I was thinking, do people want hover effects, for instance?
Then it's different. Then you suddenly are going to do, sure.
But I don't know if that's something that people practically would want to use as opposed to using a different tool for that.
What you see all the time is when you hover, it zooms in slightly. But that is just a CSS prop that you
exactly. Like I personally prefer to use CSS for those kind of
Me
transformations.
Too. Yeah.
So I don't know if it's something people want. So it's not a high priority right now. But there's another thing that
is because I kind of want to look at how this would work in other systems without having the extension of the React image. But that whole loader thing that you just made with these props, that could work in like, I guess it can even work in like, I don't know.
Anything. Like anything JS based, like so, like it could even be Nuxt. I think there is a Nuxt component, but
there's a Nuxt image component that looks a lot like the next one.
Oh, does it?
Okay. It's a bit simpler, but it has a ton. Like the new one is coming out soon, and I think this would be a really nice extension to that.
But I think there's a Cloudinary one already, right? And I don't know why I haven't looked at that for inspiration. I probably should.
I didn't.
I think Maya.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. I think Maya worked on that. I was just.
I need to sync up with her on that.
She's at Microsoft now. It's a different world.
Yeah, but she still works on the Cloudinary things, which is pretty cool to see.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. But yeah, so I guess should we dig into the code?
Yeah, let's make like a fun image.
Okay, so where's my terminal? Okay. All I'm going to do is create a next app. So yarn create next app, and let's call this Tim's image app.
Yeah, I like it.
There we go. So what it's doing, if you're not familiar with create next app, I know you are probably, but like to the viewers, it's going to clone down the default Next.js application, install all the dependencies, and even reset Git history, and just basically really give us a starting point for creating a new Next.js application.
And it goes there's not that much going on here, right? It's quite fast.
Yeah, it is. And the interesting thing that I've always wondered is it's much faster than create React app, which is kind of surprising because I would have thought that there's more going on. But
this is not the Rust stuff, right? In here, that's only on the server.
I don't know about that, to be honest.
Who knows?
You said Rust.
Yeah, didn't they replace Webpack with a Rust-based bundler?
Oh, I don't know about that. I'll have to look into that. I'm not familiar with the Rust.
Only for sale for the build, most likely. I don't think it's running locally.
Yeah. But yeah, so we have that all ready to go. I'll CD into Tim's image app, and I'm going to open that up in my VS Code.
I'm quite intrigued to see how you'll do this because I've recently learned a lot more React and Next, and so I rebuilt my personal site in this with Uniform, and all the images are Cloudinary, and I made my own loaders.
Okay.
Because sometimes the image needs to be small and square, and other times it needs to be bigger with a different crop for the hero. So I literally made like 4 or 5 loaders.
Okay.
Which is actually silly. I should just literally use your tool now. It's so
I'm curious to see I'm curious to see if this hits your use case. Let's play with it. But so like ultimately we just need to install the next Cloudinary component, the package. So yarn add next Cloudinary.
So I hope my colleagues are seeing this because we're going to have to replace whatever we did with your component.
Well, please, 100%. If you have any feedback, if your colleagues work on it, I'd love to hear. Excuse me.
Okay, I'm going to send a quick message for them to come in the stream and actually check it out. Well, let's see.
Cool. Sounds great.
So
Okay. The only other thing that I need to do in order to configure my application to use this is set up my my Cloudinary cloud name. And the reason we need this is because we need a way to be able to communicate to for what account you're using, for what images you're pulling in. So we need to set up that. And the way that we're doing it is we're just setting up an environment variable. So inside of the code, we can create our .env.local. I can set up my cloud name, and now I need to get that cloud name. Now I created a new account before I jumped in here. So don't, it's just a new free account. So you can create your own, but the DG Knight FYB. Anyways, I can paste that
Interesting
into my,
naming.
yeah, I can paste that into my, we need to use the
Oh, so
Netlify
it's
naming
just in your
conventions.
env file.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. We need to use the Netlify conventions where they have the randomly generated. I got rainbow sprinkles yesterday. I was so happy about that.
Really?
Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah.
I have like the strangest one because my account is very old.
Okay, okay. But what's that's all you need to do for configuration. And I'm gonna run yarn dev.
That is
And
really not a lot.
yeah, and at
It's
this
very
point, like
easy.
we didn't add any images, right? But
No, sure, sure, sure.
this is just for configuration. So now let's add an image in here. So I'm gonna open up my media library, and while I do have some samples in here, I'm partial to jellyfish. So let's
I love it.
what jellyfish do you want to use? How about that's a paid one. How about this one? This is a nice one,
Yeah,
right?
this is perfect.
Okay, so I'm gonna save this jellyfish.
Oh, it's going to be an AVIF. Is that what you get from Unsplash nowadays?
So if I would have clicked download free, I think it would have given me like a full JPEG, but
Yeah.
I just right clicked here and downloaded it because then I was able to save it as is and
Oh, exactly.
rename it and everything. So just a little bit easier. And plus now I can just drag it up here rather than
Yeah,
having to find it
simplifies
on my
things.
yeah.
Yeah.
But now as soon as we upload it to Cloudinary, we have this public ID, which is just going to
Yeah.
be the identifier for that image. So this is what we're going to use to actually add it to the page. So let me first open up the page. This is my new Next.js application, and let's go into the code. So if I go to pages, index, the very first thing I need to do is I need to import my CLD image from Next Cloudinary. And then at the top, or really wherever I want to add this, let's get rid of the boilerplate just so it's easier to see.
Yeah, yeah. And so while you do this, do you load the next image as like a dependency or a peer dependency or something, or do you also need that other package?
So I'm loading the Next.js package as a peer dependency, which the whole Next package includes all those components. So I can probably show you what I mean by that quick. Let's see, inside Next Cloudinary.
Because I saw that you're actually using it.
Yeah, so it's a peer dependency. So what that means is when I'm developing it, like it relies on it, but it'll use the version of Next.js that the person has installed.
Exactly, perfect.
I'm still somewhat new into the world of building, releasing, and managing projects like this. So I think I did it right, but if anybody ever has feedback
This
on that.
sounds good to me.
Okay.
Because you don't want to, like, imagine you're gonna load your own next image on a certain version, and then somebody later on gets a newer one. You don't want that, right?
Yeah, and I think that's especially important now because they're going to be releasing a new image component, which is publicly available. So I want to be able to support both of those, right? So if I fix it in there, like that'll probably create problems. So I'm trying to make it as whatever Next.js version you have, the hope is that it will work.
Yes, that's the point.
Yeah.
Nice.
So now that I'm inside of Tim's app, I'm going to say CLD image. I'm going to specify my source as that jellyfish public ID.
Yeah.
Let's see, I didn't grab the width and the height, but it looks like that is 1374. And I'm specifying the height really just as a way to create the aspect ratio, right? Like it's going to be big on the page, but we can deal with that later.
But so this is something in image specs that you should basically give the browser at all times now, right?
Yes,
Width and height.
Yeah, exactly. And like Next.js, like I think they require it, but it's a good thing to do generally, just because as we were talking about before, if you don't, you're going to be subject to layout shift, which is poor for a user experience perspective.
Yeah, no, that's terrible. Exactly.
Yeah. But now if we open up. Oh, there
it is. Yeah, it had to go to the CDN for a second.
It's a big image. So like at first all it was doing was loading it, but now like every time you load it, it's going to be nice and snappy. But we have our big jellyfish image. Yay. That's all we had to do.
Awesome.
So
and that was literally 3 lines of code.
Yeah. That's all we had to do.
Not
Well,
bad.
except for the alt. Yeah, but yeah,
The
there's
LPAC is important too, but
yeah. So
I
it's
consider doing the inf variable, if variable, and then you import it on the top and you add this. It's 3 little steps.
yeah,
Not
and
bad.
like the nice thing is, for the most part, it's a drop-in replacement. As
Yeah.
long as like if you're sourcing your images from Cloudinary already, it's a drop-in replacement. So it makes it really nice and easy for people to use.
I see this happening on the uniform.dev website. We're just gonna go to CLD image instead because all the images come from there anyways.
Yeah, I'd love to see what y'all do with it.
Oh,
That'd be
by the
awesome.
way, can you do a fetch with this one? Because some of our images come from content stack, for example, for Contentful, I think.
That's a good question. I don't think I support that yet, but I need to because I love the fetch API. I don't know why I
I
haven't thought
think
about that yet.
thinking about this, somebody told me recently that about like 98% of people don't use the DAM, but they actually use the fetch API.
I'm not surprised by that, but I'm surprised how high that is. But
It was like maybe it's a little lower, but it
yeah,
felt like super high to me when I heard.
the thing is, like, it's such an easy way to deliver from Cloudinary, and just like you don't really have to think about moving any of your images or like
Yeah,
where they're being managed. You just tack
yeah,
that in on the end, right? And then you
exactly.
immediately open yourself available to Cloudinary tech. So
I would say add a prop or maybe in an mvar where you just say, this is my base URL of Cloudinary. Oh no,
yeah,
but the thing is, you already have the how do you call this?
be like
You
delivery
have
type
the
it.
URL already and the cloud name. So you just have to say fetch equals true and you just concatenate the URL differently and you're done.
Yeah. Or I think there's different delivery types. So like if I have like a delivery type prop, I'll look into it. I'll see if Maya is doing something in the next one. See if she has
Exactly.
thought about this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't believe I haven't thought about this yet. That's a really great point.
Well, nice. Good to know. Because
Yeah.
I use it lately. I generally use it with the DAM because I use that mainly. But I also have like videos where, for example, I do a simple thing like I have a YouTube player that is actually a light player, which means I'm grabbing the image from YouTube posters, basically, and I add it on a div. And then the moment you click, it actually renders your iframe for YouTube. But that image, it's when I get the image from YouTube, it's actually not cached well, and it's quite
Mm,
sluggish, and it's not great. I don't understand how they could do that, but that's what it is.
yeah.
And so then I just pipe that to Cloudinary, and now I have super high performance. And so that's one of those fetch ones where I would use that directly.
Perfect use case. Yeah.
Yeah,
Or if you're using a CMS and you don't want to integrate, like if you don't want to put the Cloudinary in at the CMS level, which part of the nice thing is you can choose what part of the stack that you integrate Cloudinary, right? Like it's super
yeah,
flexible in
exactly.
that way. So if you have a
Yeah,
CMS, or if you're using Uniform, that could be combining multiple CMSs, right? Like
yeah,
you don't care where that URL is. All you're doing is jamming it into a Cloudinary URL and you're done.
exactly. And so actually, our Cloudinary integration in Uniform expects you to use the DAM for
Oh,
now.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so I have set it up for that right now, but it kind of makes a lot more sense. Let's say you have a hero component like this, Tim's app with a jellyfish. I might want to get the hero component from a CMS and then the image still from Cloudinary.
Mm-hmm.
That could be two fields. But what I can also do is only apply the Cloudinary rules for the transformation and then get the image from the CMS.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets really interesting. And that's what you can do with your fetch prop, then we're good to go.
Yeah, exactly. I created an issue. I don't know if you saw. I created an issue
Yeah,
so
I
that I
saw.
don't.
Nice.
Otherwise, I might forget about it. But I'll make
It's
sure
one
I
of
get
these
that in.
things.
Yeah.
Okay,
But let's
so
start playing around with this, right?
I have a question here. Can
Sure.
you make this one like responsive?
Yeah. Let me
Is that
remember
a
how
hard
to
thing
do
to
that.
do? Or?
So it supports the default
Oh, you probably have
Next.js.
the next sizes prop, right?
Yeah.
Or no,
So
they
I
don't
think
have
all I need to
sizes. They have
do.
something.
So let me inspect this image just so
So
people
is
can
this
see.
typed? Is it easy to find what to add?
It's not typed. I'm not a TypeScript guy. I would happily be willing to support somebody adding that, but I just don't. I'm not a
Oh
TypeScript guy.
man, I'm only learning it now. If you
Do you like
use it,
it?
it's very interesting.
Yeah.
If it works, it feels magical because it all kind of just fits together nicely and it's really easy to work. But if
Yeah.
you just don't fully get it, you're starting to add too many types and kind of things don't match up, and then suddenly it's a
Mm.
mess. and then I don't like it anymore.
I don't know. I've been struggling wanting to get into it, mostly because of the readability. And I've heard everybody say that once you spend a lot of time with it, like it starts to click. But I think that's the barrier that I need to kind of fight in order to get into it.
I'm on the cusp of that. Like it has clicked like 4 times, and the rest it hasn't clicked. And then I'm like, not yet. It's not cool yet. But when it did click, you were like, yeah. Because like my colleagues are full on TypeScript geeks. They're amazing. Okay. And you know what? The amount of types they write is very, very low. If you look at our code base of the uniform dashboard, you don't see many types because everything that has been typed is kind of abstracted away.
Okay.
And then coding is amazing. Everything you do, it just tells you can do this, you cannot do that, and things work out. But it takes some effort.
Well, if any of your colleagues are interested in adding TypeScript support, I'd be happy.
I'm thinking William might actually.
Hacktoberfest is still in session, so like happily.
Oh man, I wish I had some time because I'm quite excited about what you've built, and maybe I could even just extract parts and just add it to the Nuxt module or some other thing. I don't know.
Well, I'm gonna be publishing the Cloudinary loader essentially as a separate package so that we can pull it into different frameworks. So that's coming if that'll make it easier for you.
100%, because I was probably about to do that. So.
Awesome. That way, like I can easily import it and maintain that same logic for different frameworks, right?
Because it's all kind of similar. As long as props transpile to whatever you have there, it works.
Yeah. So hopefully that works out well. But let's look at this. So you mentioned the sizes. So I think it looks like by default it's giving you the one time.
It is once. Oh wait, there is a source set. Look at that.
I think this is, if I'm not mistaken, this looks like it might be like Retina, but it looks like it's the same URL. So maybe it depends.
Probably on a MacBook.
I am.
And that's why they did it, right?
Maybe.
Because I don't know, but like this is what I don't really care for. Like they actually did this. Oh wait, that just worked.
Yeah, so what I did is I added sizes, and it looks like, why isn't it giving me the height? I don't know why.
The interesting thing to me is sizes and source set work together. So why is it only one prop? Oh yeah, display block perhaps.
No, I'm not sure why it's not showing. It's not getting its width somehow. Let me try setting this also to width 100%. It might be because of how the layout that they have set up here. Let me.
Oh, you know what? Maybe you have to just kill. I don't like
I don't like the defaults that they put in here. I'm not gonna lie.
Same.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. There we go. Yeah, it's yeah.
They do a weird flex box on it. I'm not trying to bash them or anything, but like they do a weird. It's not a very practical starter layout.
Well, you remember how Flagbox and image sizing and like skewing in a weird way because
I don't know that.
Yeah, there's a bunch of things like every time it happens when I have Flagbox and I put an image in and it goes and stretches weird, I have to Google it and I'm like, oh, that's it, and then I fix it, and it's every time. And probably this was similar.
Yeah, well, anyways, like, as long as you're doing something sane in the CSS, like, it should be fine.
Exactly.
Like,
this
I
don't
think I even needed
you probably don't need this anymore now. No, there you go.
Okay.
Okay, you added 100W in sizes, which means the image is always 100% width of the screen.
Yeah, that's my understanding of it, at least. So what it's doing is, so Next.js is generating these different image versions on the fly, and it again looks like they all have the same image.
It's the same URL everywhere. Yeah.
I could have sworn that they were actually dynamically adding the different image sizes. I'm gonna have to look into that. I hope it's not a bug on my end. So much for a nice demo of this, right?
This is why we do unpack the stack, because we're actually unpacking stuff and learning as we go. And the one thing I want to mention here is that images are hard. Let's be honest, images are just hard to deal with. Because my next question was a picture tag, but maybe that's too much.
I don't support a picture tag yet, but I mean that's a fantastic idea. Like there's no reason I shouldn't support a picture tag. Let me add that as well. Tim, if you want to contribute, I'd love to.
I feel it coming. Like I'm probably gonna help you here because I love this stuff, and I've done these things in their own scope separately all the time for all my lots of projects. But maybe it's time to actually contribute some of that learning and then put it in one place
I love
rather
it.
than everywhere else.
And I feel like everything we're doing here can be ported to whatever other framework. So like um, it'd be cool to see. But
Well,
either way, like I have that issue in there, whether you or me or somebody else that make that happen.
so let's go to a simpler thing and actually make this oil painting thing work. Remember I
Yeah.
said that we had
Oh
that
yeah.
one? Let's add some fun stuff and maybe add some text on top.
That sounds great. So for oil painting, I'm gonna get rid of the sizes since it's not doing anything. But
Yeah, exactly.
oil paint, that's literally all I have to do.
That's it? No.
Yep.
Okay, now it's
And
rendering. It's
in the
putting it.
background, yeah, Cloudinary is in the background, like it'll create that new image the first time, but after
Yeah.
that, like it'll be cached
Yeah,
and
there
stored from
you
the
go.
CDN. Looks like I'm logging out props. I think I fixed that in a PR too. It's still like we're gonna officially launch it next month, but so it's still like I'm still working out the kinks out of it.
Yeah, but that's how this goes, man. It's
But we
fine.
have the basic oil painting, right? And the nice thing is we can tune this. I believe this prop we can tune to whatever we want. So let's add 1,000 and see what happens. Maybe we
It
can't
does
tune this one.
not like that.
I don't use oil paint that often, so I'm not quite sure.
No, I just saw it in the code. It's like, let's go.
So
Oh,
maybe
wow.
1,000 was too high, but
Exactly.
100.
This is great.
Yeah, like we were able to set it to a higher setting so that we can increase it. The default is kind of low, so it was hard to see, especially for a
Yeah,
big image. But now we can see we get that effect, and that
this is
turns out
very
really
cool.
good for the jellyfish.
Yeah,
Actually,
it does. This suits it.
yeah.
And so, I'm not sure if we have time to try this out, but like, I built a little thing with Cloudinary a while back where for streams like these, when I didn't have time to design a new poster frame every time, I actually built a little tool where I could say these people are in the stream because we then did internal ones, right?
Yeah.
And I had a title and a subtitle, and based on the title and subtitle, some things would be lower than others, and there's all these layers.
Yeah.
Can you do that stuff with your Cloudinary image tag as well?
So if you were referring to the nesting, I don't think it currently supports nesting. However, it
It
does
broke my
support
brain, to be honest.
what nesting?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, that's
Oh man, that was too deep, but it worked.
it's amazing that you can do it, but it is a little complex. But let me pull in just the basic text overlay example. So I'm not going to try to write this all by hand, but you have the overlays.
Exactly. Let's just put this one on. Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So I'm going to copy that and let's make it white because of the color of the image. But I'll walk through quick what this configuration is doing. And you don't need all this configuration. This is just for my specific example of what I'm showing to do. But the width, I think so I'm doing crop. I don't even need this.
No, I don't think you need this part, right? It's just
like I have the fit so that what that does is if you define the width and you say fit, if you have text that's too long, it'll drop down to the next line.
that
which
is
awesome.
so nice.
Yeah. What do you want to put on the image as the text?
Jellyfish?
Jelly beans. That sounds
Jelly
good.
beans.
But yeah, the rest of this is defining what I want the text to be. Source Sans Pro is like the font that I use for everything. We don't need the underline, letter spacing. This is just a bunch so that you can customize it to whatever you want, right?
Exactly.
But let's also just get rid of we'll just leave that in there. Let's just see what it looks like.
Yeah, let's see what this comes out. Oh, there you go.
There we go.
This is so cool.
Yeah, and we can see that I can now take off that angle. I can take off the gravity, which the default gravity for Cloudinary is the center. So it'll be kind of centered instead of the southeast, which it doesn't really seem like it did too much because I had that X and Y in there.
Yeah, if you just remove this, it just goes.
Yeah.
Now it's in the center, I think. Oh, wait, it's rebuilding now.
I'm refreshing. I think sometimes I don't know why or how to fix it, but I know sometimes the new URL loads, but the image doesn't load, and that's not something pertaining to Cloudinary. Like I've noticed
React. You probably need a key tag that changes every refresh that you do.
Okay.
So what I've seen work for this kind of stuff is just internally you keep a counter. So when a hot module refresh happens, you update the counter, and that counter goes into some key tag somewhere.
Okay.
And because of that, it sees a new key, so it has to re-render.
Would it be?
But maybe that's more of a view approach, but it must be similar to React, right?
Would it be a poor choice to use the URL as a key?
I think that's perfect because it's literally a different thing.
Yeah. I'm just curious about if there's any performance implications, but yeah, that's something I'll have to look into then.
If the URL gets too long, it might not be worth it to put it as a key, right? But You need something that updates it so React knows to re-render.
That makes a lot of sense. But yeah, so let's take this a step further. So if I'm making this the header of my site, like this is probably too tall, right?
Yeah,
So the
exactly.
nice thing, like the resizing aspect of it, let's make this 600, and I'm going to set my crop to crop so that what it's going to do is, I guess okay. There's a
Correct.
bug in this there's a fix in for this.
Okay.
There's
Oh,
literally a
you
fix
have
in
to
for this
put the
issue.
gravity always.
That's
Yeah.
only um that's only because there's a bug, but the bug has a PR open for
There you
having this
go.
fixed. So just to be clear, but as we can see, like when you're actually doing this, you won't need the gravity prop here. But all we did
No.
is we set the crop as opposed to scale, because if we set it to scale, it'll just try to resize it and shrink it. But we set crop so that Cloudinary knows to actually chop it down. And the cool thing is we're also
Nice.
using the gravity of auto so that it makes sure that it focuses on that jellyfish rather than just doing it at will.
Oh yeah, exactly. And you have many more of these props, man. This was I love this because I've been working with Cloudinary doing all this stuff kind of like once in a while do it like this and then do it like that. But now there's actually a library that you made that
Yeah.
makes it this easy. I'm gonna have to use that.
And let
I
me
will
show you
definitely be one of your contributors.
let me show the
Oh
I'm
yeah,
pretty
the OG
excited
image.
about the OG image. Like I'm so excited about this one. Because I think it just makes it so much easier to do. Let me pull up the website for it.
Yeah, I'd love to see this one. I think
Oops,
if
what
you
did I do?
make this, if you market this correctly, this is gonna be a big one.
I hope so. Like
I can
Vercel
feel
just
you.
came out with their own solution, and
Oh yeah,
um
I've heard.
I'm not
I've not
not
seen it
not
yet.
intended to
But
be a competitor by any means, but like it's a bit easier to do with the Cloudinary component that I created, so I'm excited about that.
there you go.
But basic usage, like it uses the same API, and by default, I'm not requiring the width and height for this one, even though you can specify it because uh, there's specific width and height for social image, right? That's best practices. So for
Oh,
this one,
okay.
we don't even need that. But what it's going to do is it's going to output all these tags for you. There's
Mhm.
one little weird caveat here is if you want to use the summary card, which is what I'm defaulting to, you have to have a title. And
Oh, I didn't know that.
I haven't figured out, at least according to the Twitter docs. So I haven't figured out a way to do that. So I'm kind of just like wedging that in there. I'm giving the option to specify that title, but it's
You
not a
almost
great
have a
solution.
title tag on the Cloudinary image.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see.
But
Do I
this
have it
would
in
be
there?
the title of, oh yeah, a Twitter title like that. Yeah, I'm not sure that should fits there.
No, I totally agree. If you have any better ideas, I just don't have like because it requires the tag. I want to
But
make it easy for people to do without having to think about it. So like otherwise I'd have to make a requirement must use Twitter tag in order
yeah,
to use this component, which
that
feels
kind
even
of
weird.
sucks, right?
Yeah.
What you could do is just not bother at all and only add the Twitter image property. And then people can do the rest themselves.
Yeah. It's just like I would have to make sure it's documented that it has to be there. But what I also did is I added where is it? A configuration prop called exclude tags. That way you can just like
Nice.
exclude it and handle it externally.
Nice. Yeah, this
Um,
is fine.
yeah.
There's
But
always a fine line by how much your API gives and how much it
yeah.
doesn't with freedom.
But
Welcome to
like
open source, man. We
right.
already have the discussions.
Yep. But like so this is just like some examples that I put together. Like this first one, like if you literally just want to add text on a white background, this is all you have to
Whoa,
do. Literally all you have to
nice.
do. The visual that I'm showing here is actually using the CLD image component because I can't embed the OG image on here, right?
Oh, exactly. You
But it
just,
uses
yeah,
the same exact API. So I
yeah.
can show that it's just the props that you have to add to generate this. Now, if I wanted to the turtle in space colored purple with the text on top, this is the code that I would need to do that, where I'm blurring it, I'm
Wow.
changing the color, removing the background, and adding that text on top.
And this basically becomes your OG tag.
Yeah,
This
and
is so good.
and this can be dynamic, right? For whatever page that you're on, you pass in the different text attribute so that you have that same look and feel. And you can even abstract this into your own component. That way, like you can create your own OG image component that wraps this so that all you have to do is pass in your text with the same pattern on every single page.
Okay, I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna release a pretty big website at Jamstack
Ooh.
and I want this, but it's in Next. Shit.
Oh,
Yeah, it's like, but and because I also speak at Vue Toronto, which is of course a whole Nuxt Hub and Vue stuff. So I just built it in that because I wanted to try.
Tim,
So I
just
won't have
rewrite it
the
in
time.
Next. Just rewrite it in Next.
It is possible. Like I did
I'm
it with
totally
my own
kidding.
website as well. No, but I actually did it to learn React because at work
Hmm.
we do a ton with React as well. So I had to learn, and it's honestly I said this the other day on a Twitter space. Oh, that was the same Twitter space you were on as well,
Yeah.
where I never used React, and I learned it by using Next and just try to build a website. And the learning curve was not that steep.
That's, I've been saying that to people. Like, I think I mentioned this as well. And like, I know it seems like such a weird idea, but being able to use these frameworks as an entryway into learning these concepts is
It's
so
not too
helpful,
bad, right?
because you can use HTML if you want, and all, like, really, like, if you're copying and pasting the pages to create your page routes and all you're worrying about is the little HTML inside, that's such a great entryway where you can start to
Yeah.
play with it outside of that little bubble, right?
Exactly. What did trip me up sometimes was the JSX stuff, where if you want to loop over something, you have to do a map, but the
Yeah.
map doesn't become a const, which is kind of strange to me, but it might be, but under the hood. And so I have to get used to the fact that I can just do JavaScript that becomes template snippets.
Yeah. I mean,
Where
technically you could save that map into a constant if you prefer, but I
I've
usually
been
just
doing
do it
that
in
because
code.
I just don't know the right way for React. But the project runs well, and especially I didn't do any performance optimization. I just built the thing as I thought it would be a good site, and
Yeah.
it scores 100.
That's awesome.
Like that's Next and Cloudinary
Yeah.
combined for you, right?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want me to show you here? Or
I think we're good because we're an
okay.
hour and 6 minutes in.
Okay.
So
Oh, I didn't realize you stopped sharing the screen anyways.
oh no, I just did it, so it's a bit because
Okay.
we spoke about something else.
Cool.
Dude, I really want to thank you for being a soldier and being on 2 streams today. That's awesome.
No
I
worries.
love
It's my pleasure. And thank you so much for having me on.
The main thing you actually achieved here is that you probably will get an open source contributor out of me now.
I would love it. I would be happy to have you.
When I have a bit more time after conference season dies down a bit, I'll jump in, and that gives you the chance also to do a bit more because it seems like you have a lot of PRs open, right?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate I opened up a little Hacktoberfest special where I'm giving away swag for people who's contributing. So
nice.
I've
I'm
been
too
very
late
fortunate.
for that.
No, you're not too late. Like, you still have time if you want to get
I have
something
9 days, but
Yeah.
I also have to make. I have too much on my plate. But
I believe
after
it.
the season, I'm in.
I'll
Dude,
still
thank you
send you
so
swag.
much.
You deserve it. I'll see you at JamSatConf, so I'll have some
Oh
swag for
yeah,
you.
I'll have some swag for you. How about that?
Ooh,
I
sounds
just
great.
got sent like a big box. So
Nice.
dude, thank you so much. And for everybody who is watching or watching later, the thought of this, if you like what you saw, Colby, where can people find you?
Everywhere at Colby Fayock. I have it up on my little screen name there.
Yeah, on
But
your name. Yeah, exactly.
all you have to do is Google Colby Fayock and I'll come up.
Exactly. That's the best answer.
Yeah.
Like the real DevRels have this one, right? You will find it.
Yep.
And if you like Cloudinary, just cloudinary.com
Yep.
or maybe Discord, right?
Yeah, we have a Discord where if you Google Cloudinary Discord, you'll be able to find it.
Exactly.
I don't know if we have a
Honestly,
short
best
link
answer.
for it, but yeah, we have a Discord where you can, talk about media and all those, cool stuff around it. If you want to check out the next component, it's on my GitHub at /next. You can go to next-cloudinary.spacejelly.dev and you'll get there.
Exactly. Nice. So at Uniform, we're not that famous yet. So we do have a short link, uniform.to/Discord.
There we go.
And so if anybody's interested in what Uniform does, you can see us there. But today we didn't discuss Uniform that much. So feel free to go towards Colby. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. Cheers.
Thanks, everybody.